I am not going to feel bad if you need to leave. Just to let you know, take care of yourselves, get water, do what you gotta do to take care of you. If you need a break at any point, feel free to take a break. I understand that the topic can be very heavy, and sometimes breaks are needed. There's also, in between the panel, gonna be identifying reflection questions you're allowed to pass. We don't need to pretend like this is group therapy and let out our secret desires in front of strangers. But if you have something you wanna share, that's cool too, and this is a space to welcome all of that, okay? I do ask if you do want to share that you do take the wireless mic so that people in the room, including myself, can hear you. It's really hard for me to hear people who are trying to talk to me all the way from the back of the room. So we'll just make it a habit, maybe have some, pass it back to you or whatever maybe, okay? Any questions about that? Okay, I'm going to introduce myself in a second, but with that, this panel is just one experience. I do not speak for all Black people everywhere. I am but one Black person who happens to think that this is an important topic. So while these things might hit home for some of you, it might not hit home for others, and that's okay. We have different perspectives even within our own community. I'm always open to further dialogue about things that are in my specific PowerPoints, because that's the type of dialogue that I want to have, is to be able to learn and learn from you. What I do ask is if there's something that you don't agree with, you're welcome to share that. What I don't want to do is get in a debate match back and forth with things. I can honor you as a person and your experiences and your perspective, as well as I hope that you understand mine and my perspective as well as everybody else in the room. Can we agree to those things? Cool, awesome. All right, then we're gonna start. So my name is AC. I am an LMHC. I told y'all I'd tell you what that means. That means a licensed mental health counselor. Those are the letters that we have to say, so that's what's behind my name. Not only am I Black, but I'm also a therapist, and I game sometimes too much. Why did I do this panel? Well, I started noticing that anti-Blackness was showing up in some of the games and communities that I find close to me, and in the industry spaces that I care a lot about. Even more than that, some of my other friends and colleagues were also experiencing the same thing, anti-Blackness, in whether it was the characters that they were playing as, the development, their storylines. Those things were really impacting us and people around us. I chose to do this panel to take up space and invite honest conversation. So while sharing is optional, listening matters. Any questions about this? Okay. You can't talk about anti-Blackness without knowing what anti-Blackness is, right? So I'm gonna define it, and then I'm gonna talk more about it, okay? So Frank B. Wilderson says, anti-Blackness is not just racism. It's the specific marginalization and dehumanization of Blackness itself. So when we take that quote and we put it into a definition, typically speaking, anti-Blackness is a system of beliefs, behaviors, and policies that devalue and dehumanize Black people, which reinforce that marginalization as well in society. As you can see, that anti-Blackness is more than just racism. It refers to the way Blackness is routinely devalued, dehumanized, dismissed, or treated as a problem, even if it's meant for fun or escape. So those spaces that we want to use for fun and escape create problems, right? And in gaming, that most often shows up as maybe not being believed that we're being harassed, maybe having a character that everybody loves to play, but they're over-sexualized. Maybe their backstory literally is a stereotype, right? Maybe we have unequal consequences or moderation that is taken on us. Black gamers, more often than not, will get over-reported than non-Black gamers. Stereotyping or erasure, or being told to stop taking it so seriously. When people hear the word anti-Blackness, they often think it means just racism, but what I want us to do is to hold space today is more specific. In this particular conversation, we're gonna talk about how Blackness itself is treated as excessive, and how a lot of times people become suspicious of our community. In gaming, that's not always slurs. Sometimes it can be, right? But a lot of other ways it shows up as something more subtle. okay? Who gets reported, who's protected, whose sponsors want to sponsor, right? We're told that we're overreacting or we're over-emotional. We might be told that there's not a space or a platform for us. And if you've ever muted yourself before muting your mic and avoided a community that you loved or felt like you wanted to be a part of and you came with the intentions to have fun, but there were conditions, you probably are in this room knowing what I'm talking about. This isn't about calling individual gamers bad people or calling the industry bad on itself or even the characters that we're going to talk about, right? It's about naming patterns so that we don't have to carry them alone. Okay? Any questions? All right. So I want to open this up gently because, like I said, it's a big conversation. And you don't need the right words, and sharing is optional. But thinking about your own gaming experiences, and if anybody feels like they want to share, what was the first space or game or moment where you realized you might have to move differently as a Black gamer?
Yeah, so when I was 12, I really liked RuneScape, and I did the stupid thing of sharing that I was Black, and they, got around the moderation to tell me how they felt about that. And then I realized it's not really something I should share. And to this day, I don't like online games.
It's difficult because you can take one experience and it could be something that you really enjoy, and the second that we disclose, that disclosure should hopefully help us build community or friendships or relationships, but instead we're ostracized or isolated to the point where it no longer becomes fun. Is anybody in here a Baldur's Gate fan? I see a lot of hands. I love Baldur's Gate. What I don't love is the fact that the Black character has less lines than any other character, and that in beta, fans called him aggressive because of his storyline, and they had to remove certain things because it was too Black for him. If we talk about moments like Will, for example, to where he's a demon and he has to go and save his captor, those are problematic aspects, even in a fantasy world, that can still contribute to discomfort within the Black community. And what might seem small is big to us. Anybody else want to share? Bless you. Can you?
Yeah, so this isn't necessarily a first experience, but
Yeah.
Whenever I play Overwatch or really like any competitive game, am I close enough to you?
Yes.
Sorry.
You're good. I just want to make sure people can hear.
I notice that when it's obvious that I'm not like playing with like white males, for example, my team gets reported, like my friends. I've gone through it multiple times where
Yep.
they get banned and they don't even say anything. And that's a problem,
Yeah.
Like, just because you're not fitting this stereotype. Sorry, I'm ranting.
You're
but,
okay.
I'm just sharing this experience because not enough people are talking about it, and these
Yeah.
companies, they need to be held accountable.
I agree. I
They need
agree.
to go for their money. That's all I'm going to say.
I appreciate you sharing. That's another example. Sometimes before we even get the opportunity to play or engage, the second somebody thinks we look a certain way or they realize that we're Black, we don't have the opportunity to advance or have the opportunity to even engage in play or in the competition or contribute to our team, right? Maybe they're ganged up on in the game and you're the first player out. It could be a number of things. And like I said, some of this is subtle, but some of it is not. And these are just some of the ways that the community is affected and impacted. Thank you for those who shared. I want you to remember that this isn't just personal. If these experiences feel familiar to you or to someone you know, it's not because you're too sensitive. When many Black gamers or people who are associated, whether it's a friend, a partner, etc., share similar experiences, we're no longer talking about isolated moments. We are talking about patterns that have intruded on a lot of different people across a lot of different game types. And it's hard, and it's not random, and it's not personal failure, right? We're not dealing with individual overreactions anymore. Nothing you're holding right now means you did anything wrong in this room. It means that it's a bigger conversation, and this is just one piece to something far greater. And we can acknowledge that it's a problem, and we'll talk a little bit later in the presentation about what we can do and how Black gamers have taken up space and taken some of that power back. Because while the conversation is hard, that doesn't mean that we've left. We're still here, and that's important to acknowledge as well. Now, I'm going to show you just a few characters. I recognize that not everybody in this room might agree with me, and it's okay. However, I'm speaking on certain things, and there will be another slide that talks about maybe what gaming's doing right. What are some characters that maybe give us some of that power as well? So, this is more than just a gaming issue, because there are familiar roles within gaming that developers in the industry give Black characters. And maybe some of it will be new for you, and that's okay too. Maybe you've never heard of some of them, and that's okay as well. We're in this together. So I want to ground us before we look at these characters, because these examples aren't here because they're bad, or because liking them is wrong. They're here because they feel familiar. And across different games, genres, decades, Black characters are often allowed to exist, but they're only allowed to exist in very specific ways, okay? And like I said earlier, when we see them together, the patterns become clearer for us to recognize, okay? Anybody recognize anybody up here? Yes, I see a lot of head nods. Does anybody not? I also see head nods, so it looks like we have a mix, okay? So I'm gonna kind of go in order, kind of jumping around a little bit, but we're gonna talk about it, because it's important, okay? So DJ, just people know who that is, I saw some head nods, right? Comes from Street Fighter, and we recognize that that might be one of the most influential fighting games. What is DJ's personality like in Street Fighter? You can just shout it. Brash, okay, what else? Flash. Oh, flashy, yep, what else? Loud, what else? Pretty enthusiastic guy, right? He's upbeat, he's dancing, he's always smiling. His personality is often built around joy, it's often built around rhythm and entertainment. So what's the problem? It's limited? Yep. What else? Yeah?
Put a little bit of makeup on it, it sounds like a minstrel show.
Yep, so it could be considered a minstrel character. Yep, what else?
One-dimensional.
One-dimensional, thank you. And that is the most often what is reported with him, is that the issue here is not the joy that he's expressing. The issue is limitation, and he reflects a long-standing pattern where Black men specifically are allowed to be entertaining, but rarely complex. He's not really vulnerable, he's not always emotionally layered, there's not a lot more to his story or his development. And anti-Blackness shows up here as performance without interior. Blackness becomes something to consume, not something to understand. Does that make sense? We talked about Will, right? We'll get back to him in a second. Okay, does anybody recognize, and I'm sorry if I say the character's name wrong, Shiva? Shiva? Yeah. Okay, Shiva? Okay. So she's trained, right, in the game. She's intelligent. She's fully capable in different situations. But why does she largely exist to support somebody else's story? That is a familiar pattern with Black women characters. We're visible sometimes. We don't always have substance. Or we're sexualized, but rarely centered in the story. Right? So anti-Blackness here looks like proximity without priority. We're close, and the representation exists, but not quite. And we're kind of reaching it, but there's something missing, and the narrative power doesn't exist. Okay? Does anybody recognize Nadine? Okay, she's also highly skilled, right? She's a mercenary, physically powerful. None of that is bad. I'm not saying any of these things are wrong. I'm just saying that there's a little bit more to meets the eye. But is Nadine soft in the game? Where's her softness? Her ability to be upset about her circumstances or sad. She's often framed as aggressive to fans, emotionally guarded or intimidating. That's a problem because on a daily, that's how traditionally many Black women are seen, is we are loud and we are not allowed to take up space. We are to be quiet. And when you compare Nadine to white characters who are allowed humor or charm, it creates a disconnect between our ability to show emotional vulnerability. And that's also a common pattern within Black women. Black women must be exceptional to be respected. We must be emotionally restrained. Strength is permitted, but only sometimes. Right? And who writes these stories primarily? Men. Specifically what race? White men. Yep. And there's nothing wrong with white men. I'm not saying that. Just saying. Okay, I hear you. But I'm saying specifically in terms of what I am trying to say. I'm not saying like a white person writing a Black story is terrible or bad. I'm saying without substance, without asking us for input, where is the relevancy? There's a lot missing to Nadine that could be.
It becomes a trope.
Yep, exactly. It becomes a trope instead of something that is impactful. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's important. She looks like some of us, and that's great. Not calling that out, but there's still that substance that's missing. Mm-hmm. Let's go back to Will for a second. Will is probably, out of all of these characters, the most recent. And I'm not going to spend too much time on him because we talked about it a little bit. He's a companion character, right, for the TAV? On paper, Will is heroic, right? He helps his community. He's morally grounded. We know all of this already, right? But in practice, we already said this, Will has fewer scenes. He has less lines. He's less complex than the other companions in the game. I already said that early feedback was that his story was too aggressive. Does anybody know how many rewrites Will went through? 6. 6 rewrites by Larian Studios. You want to know what the primary reason was? Was because they wanted him to be softened. They thought that his character, which I'm not saying him being soft is bad or anything, but some of the complexities that he faced in beta made more sense to his development. The difficulty with his father, the ability to kind of struggle with his morality or lack of morality, there are things that made him not just seen, but us as a community of Black people be able to relate in early beta because it was reflecting of our struggle that we see now. Does that make sense? So he isn't badly written, he's underwritten, and that's the difficulty. That reflects a form of modern day anti-Blackness that in which Larian Studios had to apologize for. Theo Solomon, the voice actor, talks a lot about this in his interviews because he himself reported that he was disappointed. Black characters being made safe and then sidelined. Now, there's some There's characters that aren't here that do exist, and I just want to acknowledge that too. There are Black, non-binary, and LGBTQIA characters. But I want to name that which isn't here. There are very few clearly Black, clearly LGBTQ characters in gaming with meaningful presence, and that's why they're not on this slide, is because they're hard to find. Anti-Blackness doesn't just show up in stereotypes. It shows up when we exclude people who are a part of our community from the development, okay? Seeing these characters together, what other patterns stand out? Yes. Yeah? What else? Go ahead. Yeah. If you can, try to use the mic. We can also bring to you.
I'm not Black, so I am also curious if any Black people have seen this pattern also, but I think it kind of relates to Will being like heroic but underwritten. I think I've noticed a lot kind of to like, in a response to racism and anti-Blackness, studios, especially in film, putting a Black character in a position of power. So they're heroic and powerful but underwritten. And they're like, well, the Black character is the mayor, the Black character is president. I'm like, but they didn't do anything. Like they weren't a character. And I think a lot of the examples I can think of are more in film, but one I can think of is like Stardew Valley. Like the Black characters are the two most intelligent characters. But especially, like I can't even remember his name, which is embarrassing. But especially Maru's father has like no character traits except for being like intellectually powerful. And I'm like, that's not a character.
Also, the community keeps calling him aggressive for some reason.
How? All he does is look at shells. Like he's just having a good time.
But these are examples, right? This is, I mean, we have talked about multiple different games, multiple different characters, right? In terms of this labeling as you're aggressive, you're this. How do you know? Like, I mean, really, how do you know? What defines what is aggressive and what is not? What if I say, that character's aggressive, and it looks nothing like me, right? There might be some people up in arms about that. Any other patterns? Yeah, can you use the mic? And thank y'all for sharing. You can just push it up, I think. There you go.
So I mentioned something kind of related to this in like a different panel that was also talking about like Black representation in video games and stuff, but so in that panel, I'd asked for some feedback about Isaac in the Castlevania animated series. And I'm not going to repeat what was said there, but I kind of had a later reflection of it that like I realized, oh, I've always seen Netflix's Castlevania as more of like an ensemble cast rather than it being about like the main, three. But they're not even really the main three in the narrative, but someone else in that panel had said, well, Isaac should be on the box for Castlevania. And it made me realize, oh, wow, a lot of people just don't realize that this is a more ensemble cast show because all the marketing is, just like Alucard and Trevor and Sypha. And what I'm focusing on there specifically how just marketing plays a role in what characters people think are important. And it reminds me, unfortunately, I can't help but wonder if maybe the Castlevania thing is sort of similar. How like in China, they minimize Black characters on like lots of movie posters and stuff. So that was just something I wanted to share from
Thank you.
from that.
That's an important one as well. We'll talk a little bit more when we get to the conversation about industry specifically, but that's important. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna go to the next slide. So those specific characters and the roles in general, how do they specifically connect to anti-Blackness? Across just the characters we just talked about, they can show up with performance without an interior, right? Visibility without narrative power. Strength without vulnerability. Safety, prioritized over complexity. And then, like I said, the absence of trans, LGBTQIA, non-binary identities. Right? When we look back at DJ and Shiva and Nadine and Will, what stands out isn't that these characters are poorly made characters. It's that they're constrained in familiar ways. Right? DJ shows up as the one that's performance without interior. Shiva shows up as the presence without priority. Nadine shows us strength without softness. And Will shows us morality without narrative space. And when we look for black LGBTQIA characters, we're mostly looking at absence. And that's important to say. 1 second. Anti-Blackness doesn't always look like hatred. Often it just looks like limitation. It's about who gets full humanity. It's about who gets full humanity and who gets carefully managed versions of it. And I can tell you, it's not always us. Yes.
Something I just thought of as you came up and talked about with, I watched the Dracula Isaac. For him not feeling like as an important character, I would remember him also for Sheva. For her as the box cover, she's shown like kind of like you don't really see her face, her back is really turned to you.
Yep.
You see obviously
Chris?
You
Yep.
see him, and then as I just start looking at the pictures again, there's also another picture of her, and it's what's called once again kind of pushed to the side, and then in a bonus version of it, you just remove Sheva altogether and
Yep.
included a different character as she's now the new thing. And once again, I get that she's also important to the story and narrative, but you just remove the character
Yeah.
altogether.
You axe them completely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not even gonna talk about this skimpy bikini costume.
Yep. Over sexualization. Bikinis aren't armor, by the way. Just in case you forgot. Okay, we're gonna kind of go through this because it is a lot. And like I don't gatekeep my presentations, so if you want a copy, I'm more than happy at the end to send it to you. But I'm gonna go through this kind of quickly, just for time's sake. And there might be some other parts that we kind of go through a little bit more quickly than I would like to go through them, but just for time's sake, okay? So I want to take us a moment to ground us in the 1700s and 1700s. That says 1970s, y'all. It feels like the 1700s. In the 1970s, thank you for bearing with me. In the 1970s and 80s, early games didn't really think about race as much as they do now. Characters were abstract, or whiteness was treated as the default. So by the late 80s and 90s, black characters started appearing more often, but often as those stereotypes: athletes, entertainers, exaggerated figures, maybe the racially ambiguous characters. And then in the 2000s, that's where we see the increased visibility of black characters. We saw more on screen, but still, we still have these narrow roles that we took on, and we weren't really the central. Oh, okay, I was wondering where that was coming from, sorry. Central protagonists. The 2010s were where we really see the push of black people kind of pouring out rage and kind of saying, whoa, we've had all this time that's been going on. We've been looking for us. Where are we? And not just those 80 versions of us, but like we really want more of us. So then we see the shift into diversity, DEI, things like that. That brought more conversations, but representation became more like slapping diversity on a logo. Does that make sense? Okay. And then we saw less depth and more emotional range. Like there was kind of it sometimes, but not consistent emotional range. Today, even though black characters are more common than ever, kind of the 2020s on, there's still gaps that exist, especially when it comes to the LGBTQIA and other minority groups within the black community. And gender diversity within the black community still continues to remain a difficult conversation for a number of reasons. Yes?
I'd also say that the next push is really coming from individual creators.
Yeah.
Companies are still not really doing that.
Correct. You see a lot more of it in indie games. Things are not backed by main developers or big industry. Sometimes they are, but not always. Yeah.
I just wanted to point out something.
Yep.
Video game cartridges were actually invented by a black person.
Yep.
Jerry
Jerry
Lawson.
Walsh.
Jerry Lawson.
Yep.
I knew his name was Jerry.
You're good.
Yeah. It's crazy because you know I run credits like Bush or something. I think inventing video game cartridges is important.
It's pretty cool. Like I said before, we haven't gone anywhere. It's just, you're good. We haven't gone anywhere. It's just a matter of remembering and identifying, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I saw your hand. I'm not ignoring people. I'm just trying to keep going. So hold it for right now. But I'll come back to you. I will try. All right. So we kind of already talked about this. We don't have to reflect, but maybe internally reflect as you look at the history. Which of these patterns still feel most familiar in gaming today? There's a lot of them, right? You kind of sit with that for a second. And you all gave some examples as well to this. We know that we're still a race. It's not as common. We don't always get our credit that we deserve. Advertising, marketing, all examples where we're limited or silenced, right? All right. Where black gaming still falls short. We still don't have a lot of full emotional range for black characters. We're letting black characters exist without stereotypes. Like, we need that more often. Imagining black non-binary and gender-expansive LGBTQIA identities. Giving black characters narrative control, not just presence. Allowing black characters to be flawed without punishment. This is not on here, but just thinking about it, maybe limiting how often we always have to have the trauma background. It's a lot, right? My dad died, my dog died, and so did my auntie and uncles, and now I'm Miles Morales. And I got bit by a radioactive spider bear. Come on now. Limiting over-sexualization of black characters. Specifically, it most often happens to women or femme-presenting characters, right? Understanding the depth of the black narratives and stories. When we talk about gaming still struggles with, like what it struggles with, I want to be very specific, as I have been, about what that means for black characters. It's not just about representation existing, it's about how that representation is allowed to exist. Black characters are often allowed certain things, but then it becomes in contradiction because we can be this and that, and then it'll be two different things that don't work well together. Or it'll be a trauma-filled background that overwhelms the player. And then we want to know more, and there's nothing written down for the characters. We don't know the full story, so we have to figure it out ourselves, right? Anti-Blackness shows up as emotional restriction, deciding what feelings black characters and black people are allowed to have and not have. That's exhausting. It's hard because the stereotypes don't disappear. Over time, they just become quieter. This concept turns black characters into concepts instead of just people. And while they're not real people, we still look to them because we look for things that are familiar that look like us, right? Anti-Blackness to black women and femme-presenting people looks like respect without intimacy, right? It's kind of like we get the respect sometimes because we're strong, but then what the heck do you have us wearing? Is that really respectful, or is it respect with conditions? They're allowed competency, but not curiosity. They can be intelligent, but it comes at a cost, right? Black men deserve to be emotional characters, right? They deserve space. They deserve strength and joy, and not to have their interiors minimized. Next slide is going to be when black representation in gaming works. This is not an exhaustive list. I literally just chose through people off the top of my head, okay? So just keeping that in mind, because I know y'all had no more. So these are just a few that I pulled, where really it works for us. Gaming doesn't always miss the mark when it comes to black representation, and when it gets it right, it doesn't feel like a lesson. It feels like a statement. It feels human, something I'm happy to be a part of and engage in. These characters work because they're allowed their full humanity. They're central to their stories and their development, and they have the emotional range, the agency, the room to change, express themselves, be intelligent and smart. Miles Morales is up there because he's allowed to be many things at once. He's joyful but awkward. He's grieving but unsure. He's brave but still learning because he's young. His story doesn't rush him into perfection. His story shows that they consulted with the black people that they needed to get his story straight. His blackness isn't erased and it isn't treated as a problem the narrative has to solve. He gets the softness, he gets the interior. That alone makes him powerful. Clementine's representation works because we're allowed to watch her grow, right? She makes mistakes, she fails, she learns, she reads. The story trusts her with moral complexity instead of punishing her for it. She's not written to be likable all the time. She's written to be real. The kind of narrative trust is rare for black girls to look up to. Shuri represents a lot of things, but she represents internal struggle. She is a black woman that is intelligent as she is unsure. She is innovative and confident. Her intelligence isn't minimized even when she's making fun of T'Challa's shoes. It's central to who she is and how the story moves forward. And when she is told she is not chosen for her role anymore, specifically in the comics, she learns to be humble with who she is, regardless of no longer being the Black Panther. She still remains the genius that she is without a title. I want to be clear. These characters are not perfect, but that's the point. Their blackness is present, but it isn't over-policed. Their flaws aren't punished more harshly than anybody else's. Naming what works matters because it shows us better representation, and it isn't hypothetical. The industry already knows how to do this, but the question is whether it chooses to do it consistently or if it chooses to be limiting on purpose. How the gaming industry reinforces these patterns. They get to choose who's hired and who's not, who they listen to, if they're going to avoid risks or if they're going to take them, if they're going to have biased feedback and moderation systems, if they're going to market their black characters or not, who gets centered on the box, on the game, in the media reviews, during the interviews. What voice actors are we considering? When we ask why these gaps keep showing up, the answer usually isn't bad individuals' intention. Sometimes it is, but not always. It's usually the systems of the industry. The gaming industry is still overwhelmingly white, especially in leadership and creative decision marketing roles. So this affects what stories we get, but which characters get greenlit and which characters have the most depth. Second, there's a long-standing assumption that whiteness is universal. I'm sorry I don't look white, and I'm not going to apologize for that. But the black stories end up getting pushed into a niche as risky, and that belief quietly shapes character writing, making it hard. And studios sometimes will write a black character to avoid backlash, but they flatten that character to just say, oh, we did it. It's there. They're there. But safety gets mistaken for respect in that case, but black people often are the ones to call it out. And then fourth, player feedback and moderation systems are not neutral. We know this in some of the examples that some of you shared. Black characters are, like a lot of you said, more likely to be labeled as aggressive, unlikable, etc., and then get mass reported during beta as we don't like them, we want them taken out, or don't put them in as often, that type of thing. And a lot of industry people will roll with that, and that's problematic. When gaming gets ugly, for us, black gamers in the room, racism is framed as trash talk. Harassment is treated as part of the competition. Reporting leads to retaliation or silences us. Speaking up sometimes costs us more than staying quiet. And I want to be honest here without being overly graphic or overwhelming, but when gaming gets ugly, as it does, it's rarely just one dramatic moment. It's a lot of them. And it's patterns that consistently get normalized over and over and over again. And racism is reframed as humor. Even when I was doing this panel and I heard people talking about it, people were downvoting it before they even saw it or heard it. It doesn't feel good, but we pay attention and we hear. Harassment gets dismissed, things get dismissed. And I'm not talking about MAGFest, I'm just talking about in general. So we are told that we don't belong. We're told that we should mute. We're told that we don't deserve to be protected in space. And that's, over time, the message becomes clear to us and we internalize it as my safety as a black gamer is optional. But the space has to remain comfortable to everyone who is a part of it. And naming that isn't about ruining gaming for any of you. It's about being honest about a big problem, and it's about refusing the idea that harm is the price of entry for anyone. The impact on black gamers is code switching. I have to show up in my whiteness in order to get you to listen to me, or allow me to have space, or to take it up. It's avoiding games. It's avoiding chat. It's avoiding public spaces. It's loving the games, but distancing myself from any community that I used to be a part of. It's feeling hyper invisible or hyper visible. It's carrying the burden of representation, which is not our job. It's not fair. It's tiring. And it's not about fragility. It's about adaptation. Black gamers learn very quickly how to move through these spaces because we have to, not because we want to. And that can look like muting ourselves. We choose silence over joy sometimes. Playing games that we love, but never engaging with them is hard. There's a constant push and pull. And we don't always know. We feel like we're being watched or judged. We're feeling like we're expected to represent our whole community. And I don't feel like that, because all of you wonderful people are here, and you are my community. And I appreciate that. But it's hard to get to that point where I'm able to register, no, I'm not alone. I might be the only panelist up here, but you all make up the panel. I, at times, have felt completely overwhelmed to the point where I'm like, man, maybe I should stop. And that, at times, creates that distance. Not just from communities, but from my community of black gamers that are really important to me. It means loving gaming even though it's extra labor for me sometimes. And that's hard and difficult. But we're taking our power back. We're taking up space even though some people don't want us to be there. We are reclaiming our own communities back by supporting black developers, creators, streamers, studios. We're rewriting narratives, we're calling out the problems. We're not letting people get away with it. We're setting boundaries around access and engagement. We're choosing joy on our own terms. And I don't want this conversation to end with only what gaming takes away from us. Because black gamers have never just endured these spaces. We're reshaping them. Taking up space back doesn't always mean fighting for inclusion. It can. But sometimes it means building our own. It means we see this problem in this community and we're going to change it. It means creating discords, going to conventions, going to panels, being part of the narrative. Sometimes it means crying. Sometimes it means healing with other black people. We see it in a lot of things. Things are changing, and we can recognize that. We can decide who gets our energy and our time. We are going to continue to reclaim space by proving we belong on our terms. I'm going to skip the next discussion just because of question. But what inclusion really means is hiring Black talent, letting Black characters be messy and human. They make a mistake, oh well, I make mistakes all the time. Trusting Black feedback before backlash. Designing moderation that protects us and players. Funding stories without over-policing them. Inclusion is not a cosmetic Band-Aid. It requires trust, accountability, and a willingness to be uncomfortable. And if this panel has made you feel uncomfortable, I've done my job. Especially when Black cosplayers, Black creators, Black gamers are honest about the harm that they face. You heard from some of them today. Better gaming is not hypothetical. It has to be a choice. We have to love gaming enough to change it. We can love gaming and still demand it be better. Joy and critique can exist together. Change happens when we refuse to choose between them. We can listen to the voices of those in the current system who are the most affected and be a part of the bigger narrative. This panel exists because love and critique are not opposites. Critiquing gaming doesn't mean giving it up. It means being a voice to a bigger problem. Holding space for how we want the space and for ourselves and for what comes next. So let's do that together. Let's support gaming and creators for doing it right. Let's challenge the industry. Let's challenge without normalizing it. Let's hear Black voices and uplift them. Let's make space for Black gamers when it's hard. Let's refuse to be silent. Thank you for being here. Your energy, your heart, and your voice matter. The work continues beyond this panel. I am only one person, and I can't do it by myself. But by celebrating and creating and continuing and reminding ourselves that, look at all the people in this room that are here for some reason. You all matter. These conversations are not easy, and I recognize it. Whether you came here to learn, or to vent, or to laugh, or to find community, you'll always be a part of something bigger. Black fans have always been here. We belong, we thrive, and we will continue to. The work is not done. Thank you. Appreciate you guys being here. If you have questions, feel free to come up. Thank you so much. Have a good MAGFest.